Yeah, good evening, Dr. Soumitra, and
Yes, sir.
all our respected chairpersons. It is really a great pleasure, and really I am thankful to our Dr. Bansi Sabu, who has given this topic to me, and I think this is of vital importance. So let me start my next 20 minutes. I am going to talk about just 1 minute. Let me start this one. Yeah. So my topic he has given me the diabetic nephropathy, and I say it is a tangled web to unweave. Let us see what has happened. My process is very easy. How the diabetic nephropathy develops, how to diagnose, and the most important, how to tackle it. So this is a very important thing to understand. So let us see what is the term diabetic nephropathy means. Till now it has been extensively used, this term, the diabetic nephropathy, to describe the kidney disease resulting from diabetes, but their exact definitions remain to be unified. What happened in 2007 KDOQI clinical practice guidelines described diabetic kidney disease as a presumptive diagnosis of kidney disease caused by diabetes to replace the term diabetic nephropathy from with the term DKD while referring to biopsy proven kidney disease due to diabetes and diabetic glomerulopathy. This is very important to understand. So, what is the difference? So, I think this is very important from the very beginning to understand that the term diabetic nephropathy was historically defined by the presence of albuminuria accompanied by retinopathy in patients with type 1 diabetes. And the albuminuria was considered to be an early sign of classical diabetic glomerulopathy, which from the very traditional teaching we know is characterized by glomerular basement membrane thickening, endothelial damage, mesangial expansion and nodules, and podocytes loss. So now has become very clear that there are various forms of kidney disease in diabetes, including non-classical glomerular lesions and tuberointerstitial disease. So, diabetic kidney disease is a clinical diagnosis based upon the presence of number one albuminuria, then decreased GFR, or both in diabetes. So, this becomes very crystal clear what we mean by diabetic kidney disease. Remember that this is with the better glycemic control now and widespread institution of renoprotective things, a lower prevalence of albuminuria among diabetic individuals have been being seen. It also became more evident that there is a distinct group of patients who develop impaired GFR. Remember, this is again very important point that we have a subset of patients today in diabetes who develop the impaired GFR and end stage kidney disease but without developing albuminuria. So again in 2020 a new non-albuminic pathway has been also described. So my first point to clear it that in the diabetic kidney disease now is a broad term, and if there is a clinical course like microalbuminuria you get develops to macro and then the GFR decline, and then you get the pathological features like increased mesangial substrate nodal lesions, then you define it as the diabetic nephropathy. But there are certain cases where the GFR decline related to diabetes without albuminuria all becomes in the diabetic kidney disease. So I think this point is very clear. So what is the issue? This is a huge problem you can see here. From the DCCT trial, follow-up of 24 years and 20, let me have the pointer here. Yeah. So 23% of those on intensive treatment and 36% of those on conventional treatment developed albuminuria. And UKPDS, you can see that after 15 years of follow-up, 38% developed albinuria while 28% developed renal impairment. And if you compare with the regional studies which we have in diabetic populations, they range from 30% to more than 80%. So this is a very, very huge problem. The recent CUFS study in 2019, in the urban Asian Indians, the prevalence of overt nephropathy and micromenuria was 2.2 and 26.9% respectively. So this is a huge problem. What are the risk factors? I think these are very, very important. Who are susceptible? What risk factors are going to initiate the disease, and what are the also important for the progression of the DKD? This could be important. One is the family history, genetic kidney disease, hyperglycemia, obesity, hypertension, and other factors like kidney injury, AKI, smoking, and high protein intake. So these are the risk factors. So glomerular hyperfiltration, which initiates the DKD, leads to from hyperfiltration to molecular pathways in DKD. So this is very simple way I am telling you. What are the some biomarkers? At present, albinuria and serum creatinine is the only available marker in clinical practice for the identification of DKD. But many new things are coming up. In the earlier stage, you can see there is a long list. I will tell you later what are the importance or new things are coming up. I'm not going detail for the biomarkers. To sum up here, how this development of diabetic nephropathy occurs, there is hyperglycemia, hypertension, increases the angiotensin II, leading to hyperfiltration of the enlarged kidney, leading to breakdown of glomerular filtration barrier, then develops the microalbuminuria, then macro, leading to decrease in GFR, capillary occlusion, then protein reabsorption and accumulation in the renal epithelial cells, and then release of any vasoactive and inflammatory cytokines, then the tubule and podocytes damage, then occurs the tubular atrophy and fibrosis, podocyte destruction, ultimately leading to the renal failure. And these are the basic things which we know in the histology what happens, like KW lesions and other things. I'm not going into detail for that. But what is important is the proportion of people with diabetes who also have CKD has remained relatively stable, approximately 25 to 30% over the past 20 years. Although the distribution of clinical manifestations of diabetic kidney disease has changed and the prevalence of persistent albuminuria is declining, but the prevalence of decreased eGFR is rising. Again, very important and illuminating point is this, that the persistence of albuminuria is declining, but the prevalence of decreased estimated GFR is rising. It is unclear whether the natural history and rate of progression of diabetic kidney disease differs according to the diabetes type. So these are some new things which we must be aware. The likelihood, the take-home point so far, the likelihood that the diabetic nephropathy, the cause of diabetic kidney disease, varies widely depending upon the clinical conditions. And it is likely that diabetic nephropathy is the cause of diabetic kidney disease in type 1 diabetes of 5 or more years of duration with albuminuria, but the frequency can range widely in type 2 diabetes. Only a kidney biopsy can confer in certainty what is happening. So once thought to be a single and unidirectional natural history of diabetic kidney disease is changing. A decline of eGFR to below 60 ml, but I told you again that sometimes if there is rapid eGFR decline, it could be of greater prognostic value. And this I think we must remember, we must keep in our clinic to just stages of this clinical thing. The other thing is very important. What is the non-albumuric diabetic kidney disease? As you see here, that the reduced eGFR in diabetic patients can occur in the absence of albuminuria. So among patients with type 1 diabetes and reduced eGFR, suppose less than 60, the 7 to 24% are non-albuminuric. And among patients with type 2 diabetes, and reduced EGFR, 39 to 52% are non-melanuric. So this is a huge problem again, which we must be very much aware. And this is higher in women. So there is now a difference between the DKD and NDKD. So what are the things how we should suspect that patient is not a diabetic kidney disease, but it could be a non-diabetic kidney disease. So if you get a short duration of diabetes, if there is no diabetic retinopathy, if it's getting high heavy proteinuria more than 8 gram, decline in GFR is inconsistent with the natural course of diabetic nephropathy. If the patient has got hematuria, acute kidney injury, rapidly progressive renal failure, suspect that this is not a diabetic kidney disease, but it is or it could be non-diabetic kidney disease. So I think again the same things I have shown here, that a judgment that alternate etiologies are unlikely by these things, and this must be remembered today. Now the second part is how it manifests and how to diagnose a case of DKD. You will see here that in the average annual rate of decline of eGFR is 0.5 to 1 ml per minute per year. But in diabetes, you can see here it is more than 3 ml per minute per year. So if you get in our clinic, if you get a patient of eGFR which is impaired, that is less than 60 ml per minute, and if you have done a urine spot test with the USCR and you get an albuminuria that is more than 30 milligram, and that is a spot sample, this you can take as case of DKD. And then you must, in our type 1 patient, this must be screened 5 years after the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes, and upon diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, at the moment the patient comes with or a newly onset type 2 diabetes, this must be done. So this is a clinical diagnosis. DKD is a clinical diagnosis, and demonstrating the presence of kidney disease, which is defined by either albuminuria or decreased eGFR, and you do a random spot urine albumin to creatinine ratio, and suppose if one sample is positive, this is very again important that this should be present in at least 2 out of 3 samples over a period of 3 to 6 months, as many things like exercise, fever, hematuria, UTI, and congestive heart failure can lead to a positive test. Again, the CKD-EPI equation is preferred. So this is again important. Now what is the clues with the retinopathy? This is a very, very important point to understand. A clinical diagnosis of diabetic kidney disease can be made in patients with established retinopathy even if the duration of diabetes is short. In patients with evidence of kidney disease, the presence of proliferative diabetic retinopathy correlates with pathologic features of diabetic kidney disease. So there is persistently poor glycemic control and poor blood pressure control in these patients that further increase the likelihood that kidney disease is due to diabetes. So this is very, very important. So this is the second part of my talk, where I showed you that the persistent albuminuria and persistent decreased GFR, long duration of diabetes or established diabetic retinopathy, and confirmatory biopsy if diagnosis is doubtful. This is how we pick up the cases of diabetic kidney disease. A short MCQ here. Suppose this is a patient, family history is positive, you see the BP is 140/90, but there is normal fundal examination here, there is no retinopathy, but the lab showing the creatinine is okay, but the albumin protein is 3 plus. So if I ask you which of the following statement is correct, the finding of proteinuria 6 months after the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is strongly against the diagnosis of diabetic retinopathy. Is it true or false? Normal fundal examination findings should strongly suggest an alternative diagnosis here. I think you will agree or not. Let us know. And the most likely diagnosis here is again diabetic nephropathy, although there is no retinopathy. So, or rather, the increase in BP in the majority of patients with diabetic nephropathy are seen only after decline in kidney function. So, out of these 4, which one is correct, where you with this scenario. So see here the beauty of this MCQ, that the patient presented here with a strong family history and proteinuria, so most likely had diabetic nephropathy. And the timing of proteinuria is variable in type 2 diabetes and can be noted at the time of diagnosis. Hypertension is a common finding in these patients, but retinopathy, as noted here, is seen in only 2/3 of these patients. So this is not important again. Many patients of diabetic nephropathy do not have retinopathy. So this is why the thing that the answer is C. Now the last point, last part of talk is how to tackle. We will have to take some general measures. Then you have to take some specific drugs like RAS blockers or SGL2 inhibitors or GLP-1RA and some new drugs. And our aim is securing the diagnosis. We want to reduce the CV risk. We want to renal risk reduction. And we have the objectives of glycemic goals, blood pressure control, and initiate and sustain evidence-based pharmacological therapy. So now what to think about the blood pressure control? This is quite crystal clear today that more intensive versus less intensive blood pressure lowering in patients with chronic kidney disease reduces mortality and prevents cardiovascular morbidity. A more intensive blood pressure lowering may prevent end-stage kidney disease. In patients, if you got severely increased albuminuria, that is defined by urine albumin excretion more than 300 mg per day, so you can here prevent also. And whenever you choose an antihypertensive therapy, which will be required for the most of your patients, in such cases, the combination of an ACE inhibitor or ARB, you add with a dihydropyridine calcium channel blocker is preferred. This is again very important point. So goal of the blood pressure has been shown here. You can see on the slide. I will not go in detail for that. So don't go for the many conflicting guidelines. I think to follow is this one. When there is risk factors, your systolic should be 125 to 130 and 80 here, less than 80. Or if none of the above risk is lower risk, then you can go for this one. So this should be quite clear. What about the glycemic controls? In patients with type 1 diabetes, high quality data today suggest that intensive blood glucose control may prevent, remember, may prevent the development of DKD, and more limited data support the strategy of intensive blood glucose control in patients with kidney disease. So glycemic control target in patients with type 1 diabetes and DKD is ideally a HbA1c of 7% or less. Here I am showing you in here with a type 1 diabetic and ideally, but all the goals should be tailored to the individual, balancing the improvement in microvascular complications and the risk of hypoglycemia. The approach to target the HbA1c 7% or less if tolerated is similar in patients with type 2 diabetes, although fewer supportive data are available than the type 1. So you must think about the risk of hypo and other things, and this is very, very important slide. So you must take care of the severity of CKD, microvascular complication, comorbidities, life expectancy, hypoglycemia awareness, and according to that, if it is your goal should be from this to this way, if you have got these things this side, your target should be less, but definitely it should be less than 8 here if the things are high here. So today, the current treatment, as I told you, is the cardiovascular risk reduction, glycemic control, blood pressure control, and inhibition of RAS, SGL2 inhibitors, and GLP-1RA. Remember, this is a very, very important to understand. Single but not the dual RAS inhibitors should be used in the DKD. We have lots of studies and which say us, and this is quite clear today, that we should not combine RAS inhibitors with the ARB. To ACE and ARB should not be combined. We have today lots of data with the collaborative trial, renal trial with the losartan or IDNT, with irbesartan or ERMA2 study with the irbesartan. And what was most remarkable about these studies was that the improvement in kidney outcome was beyond that attributable to their blood pressure lowering effect. Remember, only these drugs are not going to lower the blood pressure, but they are doing something else. So the principal mechanism of renoprotection by RAS inhibitors is reduced intraglomeralular pressure and glomerular hyperfiltration. In addition, the RAS inhibitors ameliorate angiotensin 2 induced oxidative stress, inflammation, and fibrosis. You can see here this one trial, this amlodipine versus irbesartan. This is quite clear. So the treat the most patients who have diabetes and severely increased albuminuria with ACE inhibitors or ARB. This is the fundamental thing to understand. In practice, the majority of diabetic patients with hypertension and DKD are treated with an ACE inhibitors or ARB, even if severely increased albuminuria is absent. So this is again important. But remember, while these drugs are more beneficial than other antihypertensive agents in patients with albuminic DKD, they do not have clear advantage over calcium channel blockers or diuretics among those without albuminuria. So this is quite clear here. And this is how you proceed when you use the ACE inhibitors ARB, taking care of the hyperkalemia. I am not going details. In next 2 minutes, I think I will end. But remember here again very important development after this Fidelio DKD trial. Recently the another method of intensifying the RAS blockade with we have got a novel non-steroidal MRA that has attracted much attention. And the most important drug here I find is finerenone. High selectivity and high potency to inhibit the mineralocorticoid receptors compared to steroidal MRAs like spironolactone and the eplerenone. So this is an important drug, and they may also be associated with a lower risk of hyperkalemia. So that is the beauty of this drug, and I have shown you the phase 3 clinical trial. So this is again an important point. Some studies are showing the combination of this to reduce the proteinuria, the combination of both. But here again the most important thing which has emerged in these days, that is the renoprotection. So the two classes of newer agents for type 2 diabetes have added renal benefits beyond the glycemic control. And today is the era of SGLT2 inhibitors, and we know that it can prevent important kidney endpoints including the ESKD. Recommendations is very strong for those with severely increased albuminuria than for those with non-albumuric or moderately increased albuminuria. So again, very, very important point. And you are well aware about the EMPA-REG outcome, Canvas trial, Declare TIMI 58, Credence study, DAPA-CKD, and ongoing EMPA kidney trials. So this is the mind-boggling thing you can see here. That SGLT2 inhibitor reduced the rates of end-stage kidney disease by 37%, and the composite kidney outcome of worsening kidney function ESKD by 39%. So this is something very unique we have got with all these combinations. This is a meta-analysis we are showing with all very important trials which you are aware about that. And remember that the renal benefits of SGLT2 inhibitors are observed irrespective of the presence of diabetes type 2. And we have got a study like DAPA-HF, Emperor reduced, DAPA-CKD, which has given a clear signal about that. And with diabetes, there are lots of trials we have, including the Escort trial, Bharti-CV, and other trials. But this trial is very important, the DAPA-CKD trial, which showed that the relative risk reduction was 39%. For the renal composite, it was 44% reduction. For the composite of CV death, 29%, and all-cause mortality 31%. So this trial is a very, very important trial these days. So my point is, if you want to start the SGLT2 inhibitors, start today. Don't ask who will prescribe the SGLT2 inhibitors for your patient. But when you will prescribe SGLT2 inhibitors, and how you will do it like royalty. So this is very important. Well, the SGLT2 inhibitors have broad cardiovascular, renal, and heart failure benefits. And the cardiorenal benefits are likely to be class rather than agent specific, and effects of CKD do not differ between diabetic and non-diabetic forms of CKD. Very, very important point. And successful rollout of SGLT inhibitors is likely to have the same population level effects that the ARB had. So, what to do? How to combine therapy with the RAS and SGLT inhibitors? The combination therapy with RAS and SGLT inhibitors is still the only effective therapy in slowing the increase in GFR. So again, very, very important point I am showing you. How these act by glycosuria, natriuresis, reduced albuminuria, decreased glomerular pressure through restoration of tubuloglomerular feedback. You can see the decreased glomerular perfusion and hyperfiltration. So by many mechanisms, this is SGLT2 inhibitors work, and they improved. These things are improved: hyperglycemia, hypertension, altered tubuloglomerular feedback, podocyte loss, and these things like endothelial dysfunction, mitochondrial injury. These effects are there, but they are not established. So finally, in patients with type 2 diabetes who have CKD and severely increased albuminuria despite angiotensin inhibitor, if you add a sodium glucose co-transporter 2 inhibitor, it has got a grade 1A recommendations. And use of an SGLT inhibitor in patients with DKD who have lower level of urine albumin excretion has been suggested grade 2B. And lastly, the glucagon receptor inhibitors, agonists, are also very, very important in kidney disease with the dulaglutide, liraglutide, and now the semaglutide. You can see here the improved renal outcome happens with all these trials have shown you the leader, sustain, and empire canvas. So the things are quite clear today. We have twice, because although there are renoprotection effects of GLP-1 RA, we have lots of things by increasing the natriuresis, increased diuresis, blood glucose lowering. So many way this is acting or helping our patient. And lots of new things are coming up. I will not go in detail, like this drug, bardoxolone methyl. Then the ET1 receptor A antagonist like evocentan, and then anti-inflammatory agents, ventofaxifylline, JAK inhibitors, this CCR2 inhibitors, and this pirfenidone also some people are using, HIF pH inhibitors, and this drug and microRNA. So lots of things are coming up. You should monitor the such cases by this test, and sometimes these things are regions for referrals of the patients. So my key points are, I think I have taken 20 minutes now, that diabetic kidney disease today the concept has changed a bit, and lots of things has happened. And regardless of intensive treatment with hyperglycemic control, blood pressure control, and the use of RAS blockades, still the prevalence of DKD remains high. And recent studies suggest that the spectrum of DKD has been changed and many progresses have been made. A large portions of type 2 diabetic patients with albuminuria could have overlapping non-diabetic glomerular disease. And in such cases, you might need the kidney biopsy. Today, we don't have a sensitive and specific biomarkers, but a combination of circulating tumor necrosis factor receptor like TNFR1, 2, and kidney injury molecule 1 provides predictive value for DKD progression, although it is not available to some places, maximum places. Artificial intelligence you can use, and you must add the SGLT2 inhibitors. This is, I already showed how to diagnose such cases. This overlap from the diabetic nephropathy to non-proteinic pathway, I have already explained you, and this is a flow chart we start. And these three things, these are important for the forthcoming drugs which can change the scenario of the treating diabetic nephropathy, because this trial showed the effectiveness against the DKD, and when the HIF pH inhibitors, some trials are showing very important things. So for all your patients you need a lipid management, blood pressure control, glycemic control, exercise, nutrition, and a smoking cessation. But for most of the patients, you need RAS blockade and the SGLT2 inhibitors, and some patients who might need antiplatelet therapy. By this, I will end here. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. N.K. Singh. It was really a beautiful presentation, because all the diabetologists, physicians, and this any doctor treating this condition and all the nephrologists will become richer with your presentation, which includes conventional way of dealing with the problem, including the highest form of these recent advances in this field. So I have only little one question that you said that this SGLT2 inhibitor can be a good choice for control of this DKD for progression of the disease. So how, till what level of this, I mean, GFR, we can use this SGLT2 inhibitor to further to prevent the further progression of the disease. Because when this GFR is very low,
Yeah.
it may not act that well. So,
I
is there
think,
any
sir,
related
Professor
to that?
Samitra, I think this is a very, very relevant question in our day-to-day practice. When these SGL2 inhibitors came in the market, we were taught or we were told that if you use the SGL2 inhibitors and if the EGFR is declining, the efficacy will not there. But later on, when the lots of these trials which I showed you came in the market, come in the scientific field, then it became very clear, crystal clear, that you are not using these drugs in such cases for the efficacy for the hypo control of the hyperglycemia, but rather you are going to prevent the decline in EGFR and you are other the renal composite points. So how much, so today that our the target is the if you can use is if the EGFR is more than 30, but definitely after the lots of trial like DAPA CKD, and as I showed you the Bithempa trial is going on, and some other trials also, some the stage has been set where more than 25 EGFR we should safely use. Still, some people oppose it to use below 25, but I see the future where the EGFR will be not a thing for which you should not use it, because even if it is not doing any good for the reduction in the HbA1c, it is protecting the kidney, and this is a great thing. So this should be quite clear that if today more than 30 you must use it, and the stage has been set, and might be the next guidelines when you get the stage will be around more than 25 or even in between the 20 to 25. So this is what I find.
Thank you, sir, for your beautiful answer. Because this is a marvelous drug, which everybody is thinking it is their own drug. Diabetologists think that it is their own drug because
Yeah.
that can decrease the blood sugar level so well. Obesity physicians think it is their own drug because that can decrease the body weight. Cardiologists thinking it is their own drug, and because they are thinking that
Yeah.
heart failure can be well managed with this drug, and the nephrologist, well, as you have already highlighted, that it can this progression of the disease, and that should be the, I mean, indication of using this SGLT2 inhibitor and not as part of the reduction of the blood sugar. Thank you very much, sir, for your beautiful, I mean, learning session for all of us. So I will request my co-chairperson, Dr. Bharat Panikrai, to make few comments on our topic, and if there is any question from his point of view. Sir, Dr. Panikrai, please unmute.
Yeah.
Dr. Panikrai, yes.
Thank you, Dr. C. You have almost touched everything of DKD. But regarding this last question which Dr. Bose asked you, yeah, this is now the SGLT inhibitor are indicated only the when EGFR is more than 30. But if you go for the subgroup analysis of DAPA-CKD and Credence trials, it has been seen people with EGFR less than 30 also, even people who had been on dialysis also, it has been seen there is also renal benefit.
Yeah.
So it is advised that if you are using a drug, suppose you have started a drug at the EGFR 40, and you see there is regression of EGFR up to 20, like that. So you should continue that if it is tolerated.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes, sir.
I have got one, two more comments. Regarding you have told your the diabetes, that is diabetic kidney disease and retinopathy. If you go by diabetic kidney disease and retinopathy, you see, so far as type 1 diabetes is concerned, there is a 100% concordance.
Yeah.
If you have got retinopathy, you have got diabetic, you have got diabetic, you have got diabetic
Yes, sir.
retinopathy. There is 100%
Yeah, yeah,
concordance.
yeah,
But so far as diabetes, type 2 diabetes is concerned, there is no concordance.
yeah,
There is hardly 40% of diabetes kidney disease, they do have diabetic retinopathy. So in those cases, if you have a kidney disease and you have got a retinopathy, then definitely you're sure your kidney disease is due to diabetes. But beyond that, that doesn't mean if there is no retinopathy, that doesn't mean that you don't have
yeah, yeah.
diabetic
Very
kidney disease.
important point, sir. Yeah,
Yeah. Second thing, one more, you have clearly shown one slide regarding RAS inhibitors. RAS inhibitors to be given in diabetes with severe albuminuria. Okay?
yeah,
Severe, because we have got moderate albuminuria and severe albuminuria. That is, severe is more than 300. But there is one group also 300 to 30 to 300. You have got one stanza that you have to give RAS inhibitor that. But that stanza is not there. What to do on 30 to 300. Okay?
yeah,
And you have got, if there is no albuminuria, yes, there is no need of giving RAS inhibitor. You have to only control the blood pressure, whatever the molecule may be. Why? Because the standard has strong. Because it has been seen, because this is the area 30 to 300. This is very heterogeneous. Even it has been found in that area group. Some patients they do not, even if kidney biopsy has shown, there is some patient they didn't show any pathology.
yeah,
And RAS inhibitors, this evidence is not that robust so far as this renal protection with this group. But conventionally, we do use,
yeah,
everybody using conventionally in that age group, that area also, but the evidence is not robust.
yeah, yeah, sir.
So
Someone,
thank you.
yeah, sir. I think time is already over, but someone like
Yeah,
saw one question that other like DP4 inhibitors and
yeah,
some
yeah,
other
yeah.
drugs they are asking. So I think
Correct.
the data is there, but that is not so robust as far as it is with the GLP-1 RA or SGLT2 inhibitors. But again, some linagliptin and sexagliptin, they have shown that there is some reduction in the albuminuria. And even there is some trials showing also with the pioglitazone. So that is the answer, yeah.
I think Carmelina has clearly shown
Yeah.
the albuminic reduction effect of linagliptin. Carmelina it has clearly shown. So Lina has got albuminuria reduction benefit also in diabetic kidney disease.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
So, thank you very much, Dr. N.K. Singh, as well as all the speakers in this beautiful session.